Welcome to Her Success Matters, a podcast exploring how advisors can work together to build a pathway for women to succeed in financial services. I am your host, Christine Shaw, Chief Executive Officer of Investment News. This podcast will give you rare insider access to the top financial services executives who are taking action to break down the barriers for the next generation of female advisors. You will also hear from some amazing and inspiring women who have forged their own pathway to success. Welcome to Her Success Matters. Today's episode, we are breaking down the invisible barriers that inhibit today's companies from hiring, developing, and retaining diverse, gender-balanced, high-performing teams. And we have the perfect guest for this talk. Joining us today is Berta Aldrich. Berta is the Managing Director and Chief Marketing Officer for Private Advisor Group, one of the fastest growing RIA firms in the nation. Private Advisor Group supports more than 650 advisors and 55,000 clients in 38 states across the United States. Through her personal and professional experiences, Berta has recently released a book, Winning the Talent Shift, where she candidly confronts the reality that most companies have not kept pace with diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. Berta, welcome to Her Success Matters. I'm so thrilled to have you join us here today.
Thank you, Christine. It's so great to be here.
Well, we're going to talk about your book. I was so thrilled that you sent me a copy, which is what connected us today. But before we get into that, please tell our listeners about your background and your personal journey that led you to a career in financial services.
Absolutely. At a personal level, my interest in finance and investing actually started when I was quite young. I grew up in the Midwest, and I remember watching the market future reports with my dad. And so my initial, introduction to stock market and investing was asking him tons of questions about that. But it was really the farm crisis that occurred in my teens that really helped me understand the power of money, particularly for those who had it and for those who didn't. I watched those who were in a really strong financial position by other families' farms that had been a source of their livelihood for generations. The outcome of that experience was so profound. It really created this incredible passion to help individuals and families harness the power of money so that they never have to go through that kind of pain again. That, of course, inspired me to go to college and earn an undergraduate degree in finance, and upon graduation, really a role in our industry. But like most individuals, my career took a couple of twists and turns before I finally found that perfect, what I would call passion position. So I started my career at Principal Financial Group in the management trainee position in group life and health, and received, a lot of early promotions early in my career, and then was rotated to the pension division, where I had the opportunity to learn about institutional investing through group retirement accounts, 401k, 403b, 457, and DB plans. From there, I was selected to revamp our 401k and pension plan investments education for our 2.3 million plan participants. This, I remember like it was yesterday. This is where my passion met my purpose. We made such an impact with that program that it ended up racing to number one in the industry. And soon after, I received a variety of calls from other competitors, including Vanguard, for open roles in their organizations overseeing their investment education efforts. So although, I was very happy at Principal, I really could not pass up the opportunity in particular to work at Vanguard. At the time, Mr. Bogle was a legend, for how he approached investing and client loyalty. And I was really eager to really double down on that knowledge while offering something of value back to the organization. So I ended up interviewing, received an offer, and after much discussion, my husband Mike and I decided to go ahead and take the risk. I accepted the offer from Vanguard, and we moved our family from the Midwest to the East Coast. Then I started my career at Vanguard, where I really started to build out my marketing and investment acumen. And I also had the opportunity to earn my MBA there with an emphasis in business strategy and data and analytics that would eventually prove invaluable in so many ways throughout my career. And I also, at Vanguard, they rotate us every 2 to 5 years. So I ended up getting this incredible breadth of experience and opportunity to learn our industry from a variety of different mediums and perspectives. So I held several marketing executive positions there over the course of my tenure, starting with the head of participant investment education, overseeing their 2.8 million plan participants, head of marketing for institutional 401k business, which was about, I think, 250 billion in assets at the time. And then my final role there was head of marketing strategy for the advisor ETF business, which was about $1 trillion of assets under management at the time. And as I was finishing up that role, I received a call for a CMO position at a fast-growing alternative investments firm in Philadelphia. So I went ahead, interviewed there, took the leap, accepted the role. And unfortunately, after 2 impactful years in that position, the CMO role was eliminated.
Oh my
And
goodness,
so, yeah, it was, I hope we can talk about that as well, because I think there's so many experiencing that today, with the current conditions. In addition to my 1-year non-compete, I took an additional 1.5 years off from the corporate world. And just as I was getting ready to re-enter, a prior boss who I highly respected and ended up introducing me to John Hyland at Private Advisor Group. And of course, after speaking with John, I know you know John and the team there, I knew that's where I wanted to be. So I'm currently Managing Director, CMO, and CHRO at Private Advisor Group.
What a fantastic resume, background, experience. My goodness, you definitely have accomplished a lot in your career. But I want to walk back to where we started. It's interesting because you had the intuition, even as a young girl, working or watching your dad and looking at the financial markets, to put it as basic as, well, gee, people with money in the same farming business who have money can buy other people's farms. And you did not want that to happen. And, that's a lot of intuition at a young age. And I love this statement. The basic statement is the power of money. We're so afraid sometimes to talk about money or see the impact of money. And I'm so happy that led you to a career in financial services. Also that you had the opportunity to put together your purpose and your passion. But let's get into your setbacks, because so what's really remarkable is when you take a setback and you turn it into an opportunity. So I'd love for you to dig into that a little more.
Absolutely. And, you're absolutely right. Particularly as women, we think that when we talk about our resume, we can only talk about the great things that happen. And of course, we all want to do that. But quite honestly, any setback is really a reason to find the opportunity. But to be candid, Christine, what made my kind of inflection point in my career, the setback, the CMO position being eliminated, I think what was so incredibly difficult to process and initially get through was it wasn't expected at all. By the backstory, I was, I had achieved the CMO, the C-suite position, leading this incredibly talented strategic marketing leadership team and department. We had just won multiple awards for our rebranding of the firm. My executive team had just nominated me, and I was selected as the inaugural recipient of the FCS Jamie E. Depew Leadership Award. And I will never forget this, for helping others to think big, break down barriers, and perform at their highest potential. Everything was going right. And the next month after receiving that award, my C-suite role was eliminated.
That had to be devastating.
It was, because as women, you start to ruminate and you think, what did I do wrong? Or I spent a lot of time thinking about that. What could I have done differently? It takes you down this bunny hole and down this path that is a no-win situation for anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, when you go from working 70 hours a week to 0, that's an enormous shift in your life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Initially, I did the short stint of eating every chocolate chip cookie and chip I could find, and after I figured out.
I still do that, Berta. I still do that.
Well, after I figured out that only affected my waistline, that was enough of that. So, but it was funny. It was during one really critical conversation that I received this moment of clarity from a friend that really changed my entire perspective on the situation and actually kind of on life as well. She said 2 things. She said, number 1, the most significant growth in your life happens when there's abrupt changes. And number 2, she said, this will be one of the best things that ever happened to you.
And I bet you probably said you're full of it. It is not, but initially, right? Initially.
Absolutely. Because then I thought, you know what? I know that mindset makes a huge difference, right?
Absolutely.
And so I thought, you know what? Let's just roll with it. Let's go with what she said. I'm going to believe her just for this moment. And so quite honestly, from that point forward, I completely changed my approach and perspective from worrying about why it happened or trying to figure out something that I may never have the answer to really controlling my fate moving forward. I just embraced and approached every day as an opportunity to learn and grow. Most days I was forced outside my comfort zone and it was uncomfortable. But I adopted this attitude that I was going to be grateful for every day and for every opportunity that came my way. In looking back during that time, I had the opportunity to be the best mom I could be, to grow and learn as a person, to give back to my community. And quite honestly, without that time off, I would have never probably sat still long enough to write this book, let alone come up for the concept or the idea of the book. Now, after going through all of this, I know that everything will be okay. And not only okay, it can be even better than before if you approach it with the right attitude and gratitude. What I thought was a setback ended up turning into a tipping point. And in the end, she was right. It ended up being one of the best things that ever happened.
That's incredible. And thank you for sharing that, because we've all had those moments and it is scary. Everybody's telling you, oh, it's going to be okay, and you don't want to believe it. But I could not agree with you more in the power of your mindset and believing. And I do think, especially now, gratitude is important. I've mentioned before, I keep a gratitude jar on my kitchen counter, and it's a daily practice and habit that I really think is something everyone should do. But let's talk about your book. So it led you to writing a book. Now, what's interesting on this podcast, what I've discovered, and it kind of highlights what Her Success Matters is all about. There's a lot of women like yourself who start off with, well, I got into financial services because my dad and I, right? So now here you are with your daughter, helping her in terms of her career and helping her write playbook. So tell us all about that and what that's been like, and how did it end up turning into a book?
Yes, absolutely. I know sometimes you cannot write the script on this, right? I mean, and that's what I guess makes life so interesting, but sometimes makes it super hard. I would say, all of this was really trusting the process and connecting the dots and letting it play out, which most of my friends and colleagues will tell you that is not one of my strengths at all. I'm very much a planner. I like to plan things out. So after my 1-year non-compete, I took that extra time off the workforce to spend with our daughter. That's really when all of this started. So as a working mother, I'm sure some can relate that are listening to this podcast, but I had a time to reflect. You'll always wonder if you've done enough to prepare your children for life, and have you given them the best that you have to offer. Our daughter Lauren was a senior in high school, and she was voted captain of her athletic team. And through that process, I could see that she was showing these foundational characteristics of being a good leader. She was also preparing, obviously, to go to college and eventually aspired for a leadership role in the corporate world. And I remember thinking, what is the one thing that I can give her that no one else can? I had this idea that I would sit down and I would write her a book containing tips and tools, really that no one else would tell her, about successfully navigating some of the most difficult situations, so prevalent in our workplaces today, especially for women. Once I sat down and kind of wrote the core hypothesis of the book, I decided to go ahead and put that master's degree in strategy and data and analytics to good use and began to conduct research. I really wanted to know whether the experiences of the 1,000+ people, women, men, people of color, and high performers that were in my network over the course of my career that I'd led or mentored over the years, were all of their experiences an anomaly, or did they experience what others do as well? I really wanted to kind of provide her this empirical overlay or perspective. And as I began researching, I was just shocked by what I was finding. I began sharing that information with others, and they would be equally as shocked. And then they would say, you need to get this information out. This information could help other people. Or they'd say, I thought this only happened to me. And, at the time they were encouraging me to publish the book. At the time, I knew very little about publishing, compounded with the fact that I wasn't very good at asking people for help. At the time, I thought, okay, if this could help other people, I would absolutely force myself to go outside my comfort zone. I'll ask for help. I'll put myself out there. And if I failed, it's okay, because I would be better for going through the process and maybe it would help a few people along the way. So I ended up reaching out to a friend who connected me with a woman who had just successfully launched her book with a top publishing house. During that conversation, she said to me, "There is someone that you know in your network who can help you." And I remember turning around, and on the bookshelf in our office was this series of very successful books from one of the most prolific investment authors of our time. And I remember thinking to myself, I know the person who probably helped him during the process of writing and publishing those books. So I texted him, and within a matter of minutes, I was connected to a contact at my publishing company. I sent him a proposal. He loved the message. And within a matter of weeks, I had a signed contract to publish the book. So it ultimately was fast-tracked. Of course, is now available on all retail shelves, including Amazon, Target, Walmart, and Barnes & Noble. Now super excited to say it's now available in the UK and a few other countries across the globe.
Well, I have to stop you for 1 minute and just first of all say congratulations, right? But for all the times you felt as a mom that you might have been mom shamed because you're not bringing the right brownies or this, or maybe you did. Sounds like you were probably an overachiever, but it's like you gave your daughter statistical data to help her navigate the world. And it's so validating. And now you're like a published author in multiple countries, like well done. So yeah, there you go. And you probably gave her the brownies too in the package that all the moms make for kids going off to school. So I was never good at those things, but I love this. This is amazing. So let's talk about some of the statistics that were eye-opening that you found while working on the book.
Yes, let's do it, because particularly here in our industry, numbers matter, right?
Right.
What I love about these numbers is they put crystal clarity around what is actually holding us back. Nobody is really talking about it today. So that's why I'm so super excited to talk to you about it. So here's what I discovered. High performers, these are the individuals who can outperform an average employee or leader 2 to 5 times, of all genders and ethnicities, are being targeted, bullied, and abused 100% of the time in the workplace throughout their career.
Wow.
Women, through empirical research, are shown to have the most innate characteristics of a servant leader, which is who we're all striving to hire and promote, right? They're better developers of people, have higher engagement, are team builders, are being targeted, bullied, and abused 75% of the time in the workplace. Here's what's most shocking of all. When you add those two components together, if you're a woman and a true high performer, you are the number one target in the workplace today. The number one target to be targeted, bullied, and abused in the workplace. What's even worse is that people of color are targeted at a higher rate than whites, and men aren't immune either, with 35% of them experiencing bullying and abuse in the workplace. So the key takeaway here is the very people that we're seeking to hire to create these diverse, high-performing workplaces, the people who are going to help us win the war for talent and create higher engagement and our true servant leaders, are being targeted, bullied, and abused in our workplaces. And what adds insult to injury is that 70% of those who report the abuse are being retaliated against instead of helped.
I will tell you, Berta, first of all, those statistics, when you put them like that, and I'm sure all the research is there in the book, we'll tell listeners after how to get a copy of the book. But I went through that. It's funny. I was listening to you say how your role was eliminated as the CMO. And there was one time in my career, I was at the top of my game and my position was eliminated, same sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And it turned out it was because we had hired this guy and he was fired because he had some inappropriate conduct towards me. Mm. And I was just shocked. It's like, if you actually said something, this is years and years ago, you would be targeted against. And it's just fascinating that these statistics have come forward in your research. It's eye-opening for sure.
Yeah. And I think what is almost worse is that the individuals who are the perpetrators, right, of this abuse are not your high performers.
Yeah.
But yet they typically have positions of power and can make a significant negative impact on your bottom line, but also it's kryptonite to creating diversity within your workplace. These are not your true leaders. So I think that's the most difficult part here that I found in the research is these individuals are mitigating the very people who can help create high performance, diverse workplaces.
And then that brings us to conversations like today, but it's really about actions, right? So there's lots of research. Your book is another great resource to help us understand what's really going on behind the scenes. Because I think some people at times when you talk about it, don't believe it, or they don't want to talk about it. And
Right.
At least we're now finally talking about it. But talk to us about actions that we can take and what we should all be doing to help break down these barriers and make positive steps forward.
Absolutely. Because you're right. I mean, the first part is the shock and awe of
Right.
the numbers. And once you get past that, it's like, okay, now what can I do about it? I would actually let's think about this in two parts. So the first one would be for the individual listening, what can you do? And then, of course, there's things that the organization should be doing. For individuals, really the first step to breaking down any barrier and to change the workplace is to expose what is actually happening in our organizations. And that's really for two reasons. Number one, if you can clearly identify what's happening, let's say, for example, I do a lot of work in the middle of the book talking about the specific targeting, bullying tactics that are being used. If you can identify them, you can respond from a position of power, knowledge, and wisdom. And then number two, you will probably become impassioned to start a new conversation in your organization that will create this inflection point for change. From an individual standpoint, let me dig just a little bit deeper on this kind of notion of targeting bullying and abuse and what it actually looks like. Because
Please do.
For most individuals, it's become so much the norm in our organizations that they know there's something wrong, but they don't know how to kind of put their finger on it or identify it. The whole middle section of the book is about identifying those tactics. One of the biggest barriers and tactics that's used in the workplace is, number one, a narcissistic leader, and number two is gaslighting. And women in particular aren't wired to think this way. So gaslighting and working for a narcissist is very confusing, will cause sleepless nights, confusion, and turmoil. I've talked so many women and men through these horrible experiences. They are so debilitating and in the moment have so many prolonged negative effects, both personally and professionally. Let's take gaslighting, for example. If someone is gaslighting you for the first time, the whole goal of that tactic is to confuse you, to make you think that you're wrong when you know that you're right. They'll have a tendency to be aggressive towards you or maybe misrepresent the truth. And what do women typically do? We begin to dissect everything and start by blaming ourselves. What did I say? What did I do to cause this? And so if you hear nothing else from an individual standpoint from our conversation today, remember this. What I found is that between 75 and 100% of the time, it is not provoked by you. You are simply a means to the end. If you know the signs of gaslighting, when it begins to happen, you're going to know exactly what they're doing, right?
What are some of those signs? Just give a couple quick examples in case people aren't familiar with that.
Absolutely. So a lot of times it's the shock of quickly pulling you into a meeting. I think it's kind of a disruptive effort to take you out of a situation that you're very comfortable in, create an uncomfortable situation. Number two, there's a lot of aggression then that they use. Maybe they will accuse you of doing something that you didn't do, or maybe twist a truth that maybe they were told. And the whole setup here is to get you to be back on your heels, to not know how to respond. Maybe your heart will start beating faster. As we all know, as your heart starts beating faster, blood flows restricted to your brain, and you really don't know how to respond. You actually move into that fight or flight response. Yeah. And so there really is nothing that you can do. But now contrast that with the fact that, let's say you know exactly what the person's doing. There's actually a shield built up where you won't react. You will have very little reaction to what they're doing. And therefore, what they're doing is not impactful to you. They won't make the impact that they want with you.
Yeah. We've all been there. I've worked for some pretty aggressive people. And I will tell you, I know this sounds really simplistic, but a technique that I learned to when you're dealing with those situations is actually learning how to stay calm and breathe. And that sounds so
Yes.
simple, but a lot of people don't understand that. And when you were saying about, your heart racing and all that, it's one, being able to mentally acknowledge it and staying in the calm and in the presence so that you don't let yourself get to that place where, oh my gosh, it must be me.
That is such great insight and great feedback, because that's absolutely true. If you can stay calm, you can actually, like you said, breathe through it and just get yourself out of the situation is really the goal at that point in time, unscathed. That's your goal.
Yeah.
From an individual standpoint, that's your goal, just to get out of the situation unscathed. Really, again, it's part of a bigger story. Mm-hmm. And most individuals end up ruminating or fixating on the actual event instead of kind of the bigger picture story of what is actually happening. That's number one. If you can identify the tactic, breathe through it, get through it, you'll come out much stronger on the other side. Now, from an organizational standpoint, though, there's really three things that organizations need to do in order to really create this inflection point where we can shift into this high performance, diverse workplace. The first is recognizing that this is happening in your organization. Awareness is really the first step. Most executives who are going to hear this are going to say, this isn't happening in my organization. What I would say back, and my response would be, is you cannot change what you don't acknowledge. Mm-hmm. So the first step is really getting this message to the highest levels of your organization and open the dialogue. Number two, it's replace the current targeting, bullying, abuse with these high-performing behaviors and expectations. In the whole middle of the book, I lay out the most frequent low-performing scenarios and explain how the targeted high-performing individual and leader and organization can make the changes necessary to turn that situation around immediately and in the moment. So you can use those tools in the moment to change from a barrier to a high performance situation. And then number three, the third R, is redesign the organization. And that's really where I call upon for, fellow board members and C-suite members and the new strategic head of HR to make this change from the top down. We need true leadership to make this happen, to redesign our organizations. And until that happens, we're going to continue to struggle to create these diverse workplaces that maximize their talent.
Yeah, and it's so important that we discuss the leaders, our accountability. So as leaders in this industry or in any industry, we have to start at the top. I couldn't agree with you more. And we're seeing from this past year the disruption in people having a voice that we just can't tolerate that anymore. We can't. It just doesn't work.
It doesn't. And interestingly, I read a Harvard Law Review article the other day that 96% of boards today believe that their executives are flawlessly executing their D&I initiatives. Yet only 40% actually report to the board.
It is interesting, isn't it? Right. We talk about that a lot, like is indexes. And in fact, that's some of the work we're doing at Investment News. We have a diversity Q brand and we're launching out Chief Diversity Officer. But yeah, we need to start putting metrics and accountability in place, just like we do for P&L.
Absolutely. Because there's this dichotomy between what they think is happening and what is actually happening in the workplace.
Yeah. Your daughter must be so grateful and proud of you. So tell us, it started out with trying to help your daughter and it turned into a book, but what one piece of advice would you give to women out there to keep pushing forward, even if they face a hardship or a challenge or a setback like you did, and turn it into an opportunity?
I would say stare that challenge directly in the face and say, bring it on. Don't ruminate. Don't try to figure out why it happened. That's energy wasted. And instead, focus your energy forward and see it for the opportunity it is for you to grow and flex muscles that you never knew that you had. Change is scary, right? But what I discovered is standing still or taking the easy road is even scarier. My advice, approach any setback, difficulty, or abrupt change as an invitation to find your greatness, and you will come out the other side stronger, better, and more grateful for the experience.
Oh, I love that. I think one thing I want to add to that, because you said it, is we're not good as women asking for help. So asking for
Yeah.
help is huge, especially when you're in those moments. It doesn't mean you're any less strong or worthy as a woman, but we all, I always the analogy, because I love football. I love Tom Brady. Sorry, but from New England, so I get that right. And, even he has a coach, right? It's like the greatest of all time. No matter who you are in life, you could always use help. And women are really not good at that. So I love that you threw that in there as well.
Yeah.
Berta, tell us and our listeners how we can get a copy of your book if you're not fortunate that one just fell into your mailbox like mine did. How do people go out and find your book and follow you?
I'm active on all social media, both from a private advisor group standpoint and personally at Berta Aldrich, or you can find the book at a discount actually at bertaaldrich.com, or you can also find it on all of the major retail outlets, Amazon, Walmart, Target, and Barnes & Noble.
Oh, fantastic. That's so exciting. I cannot wait to see the success like a year from now. And more importantly, just the sound, solid advice you're giving to people and to companies so that we can all make a difference as we go forward. My final question that I ask all my guests is, please tell us in your words why you believe her success matters.
So that question reminds me of an MIT study on gender and performance. The gender balance team in the study was made up of 50% men and 50% women. And that team outperformed the all male and the all female team with 41% higher revenues.
Wow.
41% higher revenues. To answer your question, why does her success matter? Because her success is our collective success. And we cannot achieve high-performing, diverse workplaces without her.
I love that. So from your journey, watching people buy farms, understanding the power of money, putting your passion and purpose together at work, becoming a CMO, having a setback, helping your daughter, writing this book, and now being part of the private advisor group. Just what a phenomenal conversation, Berta, and you have so much to offer. Thank you for sharing this. Now I can't wait to finish reading the book. This is amazing.
Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for Her Success Matters. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Her Success Matters. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available, and share this podcast with others that believe her success matters.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Investment News. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.